Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Bell to Bell with Bobby Blaze. I'm your host, Professor Jeremy Vilmur, and joining us now from somewhere inside an igloo, Bobby Blaze.
Man, it was freezing in there too, let me tell you. Man, I'm outside right now actually doing this podcast, just so you know. I have no internet, but the good thing is I have power. My power went off on Monday evening. It was restored Saturday at about noon. It was supposed to not be back on until Monday, according to the report I got. But hey, thankfully those guys got the trees trimmed out of the way. But unfortunately, the way my internet line runs, it just took it completely out. I've got to call into them. I want to give a couple special shout outs, Professor, because I couldn't have got by this week without a couple special people. One was my brother. Monday night I stayed at my house. It went out relatively late, like at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. My house was already warm, and it stayed pretty warm throughout the night. Tuesday night started snowing, icing again. Very, very cold, man. And I stayed with my brother. I have a hard time sleeping in anyone's bed but my own, but he had heat in one room. He had no power, but man, we had a nice little time like we was back in high school. Shared some food and listened to some music on the little AM FM radio deal, man, and had little candles, and it was really cool, man. So shout out to Jim, thank you. And then also Wednesday and Thursday, I tell you, man, I couldn't have made it Friday. Larry, your lifesaver, buddy. My brother Jim had to leave town. He had no power still, but he had other plans to leave town. So his friend Larry, my friend, pal, dude, he showed up a generator. I had just left my house. The streets were clear. I came back. I just went down to get a sandwich, came back. The dude pulled up. He had a generator, man. So I've been on a generator power. So thank you, Larry. You know who you are, man. Special shout out to you guys. Friday night was 9 degrees, Jeremy. 9 degrees.
Yeah.
And I had that generator, man. So I got one room that I sleep in up to about 57, 58, and that's all I needed, man. And I had enough for a light bulb, and I had enough for, I had enough for several things, but I chose to put up my sleep apnea machine, one light bulb, recharge my phone, and have that heater running in that room. But, man, I missed my sleep apnea machine, 4 nights, man. I thought I was going to fucking die for that. I was up every half an hour to an hour snoring and coughing and deep breathing, and fuck, man. Anyway, I'm blessed. I'm grateful. I'm outside right now doing this podcast, and let's have some fun about it. I'm not bitching, man, because I tell you, hey, there's a lot of people that was a lot worse off than I was, and I had some people looking after me, man. I had food to eat, and for the most part, I was warm.
Well,
as I know there's other people out there right now that look forward to this show every Tuesday morning when we drop. I don't know what that noise was, but Thick's one's placing an order where I'm at.
You dropped out for about 15 seconds there.
My bad, man. Thick's one's back there placing an order.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not your fault. I mean, obviously you're doing what you can do to get by, so.
Yeah. Hey, I'm at a place right now. I'm looking in my rearview mirror and it says bag of ice, 8 pounds. And I'm sitting here around snowbanks. Hell, I'll get out here and sell some of this snowbank ice maybe and save some people some money. I don't know. Maybe I can charge less. It looks like, I don't know, $1.49 or something. I might charge it for $1 a bag, or maybe make one of the snowmen memes and say, hey, free snowmen, come and self-assemblies required, you know.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. You know, I like the European yellow snow. That's always one, yeah.
It's good flavor.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a fucking shit show this week, hasn't it? I mean, I'm in one of 3 places that didn't get snowed on, it seems like. Yeah.
I know everyone got hit, man. I know that.
Yeah.
You know, it's been a crazy week. That's how it has been. But, anyway, man, what else is going on? Oh, you know what? Shout out. We might as well do this. Nothing special this week. Cause it's the entire month, still Black History Month. I didn't get time to do much research or anything. due to, dead phone for a couple of days, no internet, etc. But I do want to make mention that, we tried our best to honor some Black history each week of this month. And last week, I really enjoyed that clip that was sent around that I gave some info on. And I know, again, just to be redundant, if you go back 2 years ago, we did a real good full hour and a half on Black history on the professional wrestlers, as some of our favorite Black athletes a couple years back, if you go back and look up that episode.
Yeah, after the people you talked about last week, and I had their names written down, and of course I've misplaced it since then, I saw where people were posting about them on Instagram last week.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
cool.
Now I wish I would have held on to their names, because I just thought it was cool, because I'd never heard of them. And then it's
they're on my notebook at home.
Yeah. And then it's that thing, like, you've never heard of anybody, and then all of a sudden in one day you hear their name 15 times,
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. So, anyway, man, we're recording on a Sunday. You can get this on a Tuesday if all things go well, because hopefully Jeremy won't get any snow. He's one of 3 places that didn't. Forest fires hopefully are subsided out there. Yeah. Hopefully, Godzilla don't come out of the ocean out there, Jeremy. And,
still wouldn't shock me. Yeah.
It wouldn't shock us, man, the way things are going. But hey, man, we're doing all right. So I know we're going to talk about books this week, man. That was going to be our topic. So we can go into that. I sent you a list of some of the books that I've enjoyed through the years in professional wrestling, some recommendations, and I know you probably have a couple favorites too. So I'll let you start us off, because you've got the list. I've just got it in my head what I've sent to you. Again, that's written in a notebook somewhere too at the house.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was going to say, so we're doing this on a stolen Wi-Fi signal, so we're going to have to keep it kind of quick, everybody.
Yes, absolutely.
So we're going to just dive right in here. Okay, Bobby, your first book that you had listed, and these are not in any particular order, is Purely Dynamite by the Dynamite Kid.
Yeah, I listed that one first for a reason. It's a hell of a good book, man. Especially if obviously you're a fan of Dynamite Kid, you'd want to read it. I read it while I was in Japan, which made it that much more special for me. Let's see. If you like Calgary wrestling, the Bulldogs, ribs and pranks, and just pretty much a straight shoot. He wrote it as a shoot and as a work together. He pretty unique how he put it together. The last company he worked for in Japan was Michinoku. He went back, of course, he was much smaller then. He even had pictures of him and Sasuke together. But my friend Willie and Joe, they had copies of it that he had given them, were autographed for them. And like I said, I was on a tour bus. Very easy read. I know Chad Collier was on that tour with me too. Three or four Americans were with me. We all read it, man. It's a great book. Talks about him shooting Harley race full of steroids, which was actually milk. And he asked one day and said he wouldn't tell anyone. As soon as he got on the bus, he told everyone he gave Harley steroids. And when Harley got on the bus, of course, everyone started ribbing him, but Harley didn't know he had been ribbed with milk, not some kind of steroid. Just shit like that, man. It's really, really funny. Good serious books. Talk about him getting his teeth knocked out with the Raju brothers when he got attacked there with WWF back in the day. Just the pranks they did. Kind of brutal honesty. Talks about all the drugs he did. It's a good book. It's a good insight. I wouldn't advise that kind of lifestyle for anyone. I'll tell you that. He lived a crazy life.
Well, yeah, I was going to say people used to live pretty fucking hard, especially on the road. It's not the sort of thing you want to do anymore, probably.
Yeah.
Well, you notice all those people died relatively young too. So
yeah, almost everyone he mentioned in his death. I'm pretty sure by now. But yeah, Purely Dynamite by Dynamite Kid. I listed that one first, and I know what I listed second, and you could tell the people why I listed it second, probably.
Have a Nice Day by Mick Foley.
Yeah.
Well,
New
this
York
is
Times bestseller, right?
We have the New York Times bestseller. Is this the only wrestling book to ever been on that list?
Oh man, good question.
Yeah.
That might be question of the week.
Well, anyway, so it is a New York Times bestseller. Why did you list it after Dynamite Kid?
Oh, because I read it like a couple of days after while I was on that same tour while I was in Japan. I was over like 3 weeks, and that's what came to my mind a couple of nights ago. And I had several others listed on that list way above, but I just had enough room on a last piece of yellow legal notebook pad that I wrote those two down at the very bottom. So I started from the bottom because they just come to mind a couple nights ago, maybe Monday or Tuesday, I guess it was. And then during the daytime, I hit a lot of sunlight during the daytime, left my curtains open, and I wrote them down on a page that had already been filled pretty much with some of the books. That was why. Wasn't any particular order for ranking them. It was just a really, really good book, and it was just the order I read it in at that particular time of my life. And I like Mick Foley. He's a good dude, man. Really good dude. Class act.
Yeah.
Does a lot of good, man. Does a lot of good.
Yeah, well, and there's another one, lived really hard flying off the top of cages.
Yeah.
And now the poor bastard's all crippled up. I mean, that's a hard life, man. You know?
Yeah. Oh,
yeah, Foley was great. I never read his book because much like I read a Dusty Rhodes autobiography a couple years back or a while back. And the entire time I read it, I could hear Dusty's voice. And when I tried to read Mick Foley, I hear Mankind's voice, and I don't like it. I can't. Gotcha. I can't get through it. And someday I'll be able to do it. It's just like when I tried, I just kept hearing that screechy goddamn delivery he had, and I couldn't.
Yeah, I got you. I certainly understand that, man.
Yeah.
I didn't. You know what? I didn't read that Dusty book. I remember when we did the special on him, used that cover several times. To send out on tweets and stuff, and to get our a message out there to let people know that episode was available. What was it? The American Dream, American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, I think it was.
Yeah,
nice cover shot of him like walking.
Oh, it's a badass cover.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It's a badass cover, but there's like. So when you hear Dusty, you hear Dusty. When you read his words, you hear him. And there was a section in there where he's talking about him and his wife going to dinner with Pat Patterson and Pat's partner. And he, of course, this being written in the early 2000s, and gay rights were a little bit different back then, and people were still kind of homophobic more so than now. So Dusty takes a paragraph to tell you about how the dream doesn't care where a man puts his business. And I'm hearing this in Dusty's voice, and I'm just like, no, I shouldn't. No.
Yeah.
But,
I got you.
Yeah.
Well, stay close to that. We went from Mick Foley there, hearing his voice, to Dusty's voice. Now, the next book I'll go ahead and tell you is on my list there is, cause I could hear his voice when I read it, and I read it twice, and that's Terry Funk's, More Than Hardcore. And I could hear the funker, talking as I read his book. And of course, he spoke about Dusty and Mick in his book. He put them both over, of course, how Dusty had started, came back down there in Amarillo, and no one, gave Dusty a chance for a while there, and he went out on his own and come back and, became a big star as he did. But, I could hear the funker's voice there as I was reading his book. So that's one of my favorite books. Like I said, I read it twice. So I had that as a recommendation. And again, any of these, are probably available on Amazon still. And probably, used or in good condition. I used to get a lot of books, if you like print editions, from the Goodwill, man. I'd go to Amazon, and I realized that Goodwills were sending me the books, just different Goodwill locations across America.
Oh, yeah.
And I might pay $4.99 for the book, and then it was like $3.99 to ship. Well, then I got Amazon Prime, of course, and then so you're getting a book for $2 or $3 and shipping it free. So good deal. And I haven't bought one book yet that hasn't said like new condition, that it's been in very good condition. I've bought some that say, dog-eared or personal notes, and I knew that ahead of time, and they weren't bad buys at all for the price for just reading a book,
Oh, yeah. Well, especially if you're just grabbing like a trade paperback or something, some pulp book or something. Bobby, they're not like an affiliate or anything, but I found a site called thriftbooks.com.
Okay.
And it reminds me of Amazon in the early 2000s, back like half.com and all those sites were still around.
Yeah.
And I bought, I don't know where half my books are. I assume my ex-wife has the majority of them, either that or they're a bonfire by now. But, as I'm realizing that certain ones are missing, I'm trying to replace them. Like, what was the one I just got? The Power of Habits is a book I read about 10 years ago that I always meant to reread and get more into.
Yeah.
I got a book on mindfulness that I've been meaning to read forever, but I got them all at like, a third of cover.
Right.
And they were,
understand.
and they were all in great shape when they showed up. So
Yeah.
if you're looking for books, you guys may want to check them out first.
Thrift.com?
Thriftbooks.com.
Okay, cool. One of my books I couldn't find, and during this pandemic, I was in a couple of my old boxes there. I told you I've had stuff. I didn't get underneath my house, but I've got old boxes. Some have got books and DVDs and pictures and stuff. And I went to look for a book I was going to reread, and I read it 4 or 5 times. And it's No One Here Gets Out Alive, Jim Morrison book.
Oh, yeah.
And I haven't read it forever, and I thought, I'll go back here and get that. I don't know exactly where it's at. Well, it wasn't there, so I've been trying to think, do I want to go to the library and have it sent to me on pickup, or do I want to actually order a copy of that? Because I really enjoyed that book back in the day. Again, it's a little bit off base for wrestling, but just learning I know exactly where my Terry Funk book's at.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you another book that is right there, right beside it. I'm going to jump to this one that, Rags, Papers, and Pins by Corny. That's a pretty damn good book, man. It's got a lot of memorabilia about the Memphis. I've used it as a reference, on this program before. And of course, got put Corny over. He wrote so many of those articles for those press releases and, official, programs for Memphis back in the day. And a lot of his photos are in it, of course. And it's that Sputnik Monroe said, there they go, going to, push those rags, papers, and pins or whatever, the gimmicks, let the gimmicks war begin or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so Cornette kind of took that and used that for the Memphis memorabilia book. It's pretty good. I enjoyed that quite a bit. And this one of the ones you can just pick up anywhere and read, go to chapter 5 and it's about, 1981 maybe, or you can go to chapter, 2 and it's back in the 60s somewhere, stuff like that. So every once in a while I like a book like that you don't have to, this is the beginning, this is the middle, this is the, climax, and this is the end or what have you,
Yeah.
But,
I've gotten to that point where I've got such a short attention span. I prefer things that are broken into easily digested standalone chapters. I gotta wonder, knowing that Jim Cornette wrote those, programs and press releases and this, that, and the other, I have heard that Jim Cornette kind of fancies himself like a guy who knows the English language, grammatically, spelling wise, blah, blah, blah. Was that the start of why he hates Vince Russo? Cause that guy's practically illiterate.
I don't know, man. I have no idea, but that's a good question. I hate that too when I see stuff written. A couple people I follow on Twitter, and I'm like, you're butchering this. Either write it all the way out or don't. I mean, there are certain exceptions. Don't get me wrong, because I realize it is Twitter. Where you find me at Bobby Blaze 744, find Jeremy at the Geekest Cast, or hit us up on our joint account at the Bell to Bell Blaze on Twitter. And I think that's available on YouTube as well. Or shit, I always say that on Facebook.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Speaking of books, I'll get back to wrestling in a minute. Well, I was going to tell you, I read a really good book, Me and the Devil. And I read it just a few weeks ago, come out in about 2008 or so, but it's a novel. And, I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name all of a sudden. But anyway, while I was reading that, I had to have some light reading, like during the day. And I broke it up. I might read a little bit I had a couple comics, Mad Magazine to let me check out, some stuff in between.
Yeah.
If they got Mad magazines in our library or any magazine, once it's out for 3 weeks, you can check one out for 3 weeks. And I think they reopened. I'm not sure. Pick up only. You just call. And if you have something you placed on your order, they'll walk it out to you or meet you at the door. So, no contact kind of thing. But I haven't been down there for a few weeks, once I dropped those last couple books off. But just getting back to how I read sometimes, you can read 2 or 3 things, but I can't read 2 or 3 novels at the same time. I like to have a good wrestling magazine a good wrestling book. I can be reading that, and then I can say, okay, I can do some lighter reading with, an old copy of Silver Surfer or something.
Right.
So
I don't know, man. Some of that late 60s Silver Surfer shit was kind of heavy.
Yeah.
That was some weird cosmic fucking goofy stuff going on. Or mid 70s is what I'm thinking. But yeah.
Mid 70s, I think.
Yeah.
All right, back to the wrestling. What we got?
Well, real quick, I believe that the author you were talking about there was Nick Tosh's?
Tosh.
Tosh? Uh-oh. Let's see. Did you drop out again?
Then I've got about a little bit less than 49% of a battery left.
All right. Let's power through this guy here.
Just letting you know.
Well, let's talk about My Life in Wrestling by He'll Cut a Bitch, Gary Hart. Well,
can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I can hear you again.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. So I've read part of that. I'm not going to get into how I got a copy of it. I have a digital one. That's it. We do happen to know somebody that tracked down a print copy of this book for the low price of like $400.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And they kept texting us pictures to rub it in.
Yeah. Did I say 900 or 1700 was my guess at first? And yeah, I got some of those texts too, but goodbye for him. Not like goodbye, but goodbye, B-U-Y.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was a pretty good book, man. Let's see. What did you get a copy of? I sent you one, didn't I?
Yeah.
What did I send you? What's that called? Kayfabe Memories or something?
You know what, Bobby? That didn't show up. That loaner you sent me,
okay.
It never showed up, so I don't know.
My bad. I tried to send you something for 10 days there. It said I could. I was on a Kindle and it was, it just so you could send it. You bought this. It told me the date I bought it and it said you could send a loaner and I tried to. Anyway, it's, Jeff Bowden and, anyway, it's just about down in Florida. They took several professional wrestlers to dinner through the course of over a course of a couple year period there, and this interview them. It's breaking kayfabe with Bowden, I think, or something like that. They basically have a lunch or a dinner, and each legend they talk to, from Funk to Dusty to Flair, and each person like that. And at the end of it, what I really liked was they put a couple of letters in there, and one of them was a letter from Carl Gotch. I think he was bitching Meltzer out or something. It was in Meltzer's newsletter, and he might have been bitching Lou Thesz out or something. I can't remember what the I know I was living in Tampa at the time that Malenko and Carl Gotch both wrote letters to Dave Meltzer, and I think it was something over Lou Thesz, and they said that he, they're older guys, they were, back then, and they was basically telling Thesz he's more welcome to come and work out their gyms in Florida if he'd like to. It was good stuff, but Bowden included a couple of those letters in that book. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank on her name, and I'm sorry you didn't get that copy I sent you. It's one of those ones you could pick up at any time and read here and there and all that. So, and you sent me a book. You remember that book?
Was that Death of the Territories?
Yes.
That was a good one.
That was a really good book. I appreciate that. It was a kind gift. That's Tim Hornbecker, correct?
Yeah, that is.
Yeah. That was a good one. Appreciate that.
I like that one because it contextual, like there's stuff in there and we know like the details, but we didn't know how these two things fit together.
Yeah.
How those details don't exist in a vacuum. This was involved with that, even though they're 6 years apart, things like that. That was cool. Seeing how somebody actually laid out almost like a forensics map of how all this stuff went together. To destroy the territories. That was actually, reading that book is where I realized that Jim Crockett was just as much to blame as Vince McMahon.
Yeah, right. And I'll say this, it also kind of showed how vicious Vince was in going after.
Oh yeah.
This is what I'm going to do. You're on board or you're not. He was going to get his. So, but yeah, I remember you explained that deal about Crockett too, and I certainly respect that point of view. What else we got, man? I know we're just kind of talking books here.
Well, let's go to Stan Hansen, The Last Outlaw.
Oh yeah. Well, that's on my old Kindle. It's still on sale for $9.99 on Amazon. I don't know. I think the book is actually either $25 or $30. I didn't have a copy, when he come, they had him in town up in Charleston, West Virginia a couple of years ago. And, I got to speak to him. I really enjoyed that book. If I'd had a hard copy, obviously I would have gotten it autographed by him. But, what I spoke to him about, we kind of went to the side for a second. I said, man, I just have to really, I've got to ask you, man. Cause he said in the book, only a couple people, he said, no one can move, Joe Malenko. If Joe Malenko didn't want to go, he wasn't going to go. And he said Steve Williams tried him, and he saw that. You know, he was really good friend with Joe and Dean both, Stan Hansen was. And he pretty much just said that Jody was the man. You know, he's talking about him being trained by Carl Gotch. And what I told, you know, Stan that's who I trained under was Larry originally, and then Dean. And then when things, you know, there at the end there, Joe started coming back over and would do some conditioning and stuff for Japan. So they all had a hand in that, you know, and Stan just really put the Japanese way over. Talked about his conditioning. He'd get up before. It's one of those deals like Flair. No matter how late they were out the night before, he was up early in the morning, and he was doing the stairs out into the hotel. He would do cardio up and down the stairs in the hotels. It's just talked about him and Brody a lot. It was really, really intense. You know, he's talking about pretty much living there, you know, for darn near I think it's 27 years on and off, how many, you know, times a year he would perform there, of course. But it's a pretty good book, man. And he is the last outlaw. He tells that story about, how he went out and was on his tractor and some way the, AWA belt fell off the tractor and got ran over 4 times.
Well, you know, you're riding around on your tractor with your heavyweight wrestling championship title belt, as one does.
And as you should. That's right, as a champion, man.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you got to respect and present the title, you know. And but sometimes things happen and go wrong, and they fall off and get ran over. And then while you're looking around, you might back over it a couple times or something. I don't know.
Stan's legally blind. He didn't even see the belt probably when it fell off.
Boy, I saw a supercut on YouTube one time. It was about 4 minutes of him just throwing lariats.
He takes people's heads off.
Oh, Jesus Christ. You can tell that he's legally blind the way those fucking, because he doesn't know what's there. He just swings as hard as he can.
Just swings it, man.
Yeah.
So, he didn't know he was running over anything with that tractor.
Nope.
So, and I guess probably his wife put the belt in a presentable envelope to ship it back to Vern or whatever. I don't know. That might have been ran over too. I don't know. Yeah, Last Outlaw is a pretty good book. I know it's $9.99 on Kindle. Like I said, it's still up there. I checked it the other day. I had another one on my Kindle. We just talked about JJ here recently, and it was Wrestled Like Seagulls. That was one I'd bought on Kindle a couple years back, and it's a pretty good book. We used it to get some good info when we was doing our managers and territories and superstars on those episodes just a few months back. So put that book over there. What else we got there, Jeremy?
Well, we got Slobber Knocker on here, which is funny because I've got it sitting right here, but I've never read it.
You've got a copy of it?
Yeah, I've got a copy of it right here.
Oh, okay. I've got it on Kindle, and that's where I read it at. I thought it was pretty good. Early on, especially when he's talking, I think around 70 to 74, somewhere where he's talking about getting out of school in Oklahoma there and working for Leroy McGurk and driving him around and refereeing and really getting started. I really enjoyed that quite a bit too. Pretty good book, and you can hear JR's voice in it. I'll say that a little bit. You're like, cause when he goes back and talks about his childhood and stuff, you're thinking, man, he wasn't just an overnight success. You know what I'm saying?
No.
He paid his dues to get there where he was at, and his voice does come through that way.
Yeah, he definitely had his time in, because before, like you're saying there, before he was a microphone guy or anything else, he was a driver. Yeah. And driver's a shitty job, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And I have to imagine that Leroy McGurk was a bit of an asshole by that point in his life.
Well, he said, you're blind, and he sat there and drink his whiskey, and basically just, talk about the business, and sometimes not in such a, polite manner, I guess. He's a little bit hateful, resentful, and those type of things. But he also sometimes would get the shittiest room on the road when I had to stay all night. He was talking about that. But Danny Hodge and trying to think who the other person, a couple of the guys would let him sometimes sleep on the floor or get a futon in their room, or a fold out or, whatever. And he learned a lot that way too, by listening to those guys talk. I'm trying to think of who he was with. I know Danny Hodge was one of them, and there was another one, one of the old time guys, and they would, let him share a room with him sometimes if they was on the same 2 or 3 day loop there. So, that was pretty cool, I thought.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if I'd want to be driving Leroy McGurk around or not. I mean, you'd probably learn a lot, but also I'd imagine you got your ears burned a lot too.
I would figure, yeah. When you get to a certain age in life, it just seems like people become bitter, or a lot of people become bitter. And you know what? I think when you hit a certain age, you deserve it. You should, if you're angry, you should be able to let it out,
Yeah, sure. Get it out there, man. Get it out there. Oh, man, I don't even know what time it is. Don't even know what time we're closing in on.
We got one more that we're going to mention, and then we'll probably wrap up here. But
that sounds good.
Listen, You Pencil-Necked Geek by Fred Blassie.
Yes. Have you read that?
I have not. I've heard the song. But I've never read the book.
Of course. I read the book about 2004 or 5, I'm going to say. Yeah, 2004 or 5. My uncle had a copy of it, and I was just happened to be visiting his house, and he had one laying around there, and I was going to be there like 3 or 4 days, and it was an easy read, and I just enjoyed it because I didn't really realize how huge of a star early on Classy Freddie Blassie was. You know what I'm saying? The Hollywood lifestyle, the sharpening the teeth, the big, people having heart attacks in Japan and during his matches, and he took credit for, people actually died during my matches, like I said, it's been a while since I read it, but very easy read. Some funny stories about back being on the road at that period of time in the 60s and stuff. And apparently he had a big dong, and he liked to show that off. It's him and another guy, I can't think of who it was, had big dicks, and they liked to swing them, not in the locker room, but in the locker room, but also, in the hotel rooms and at the lounges and things like that. I can't think of who his running partner was, but that's what they were known. They were coxmen, coxmen back then.
Did you know that LBJ was hung like a fucking mule? And when people would pick an argument with him and ask him, why the fuck should we do that? He'd whip his dick out and say, that's why you should fucking do it.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So LBJ, and was it Milton Berle?
Milton Berle is the legend. Apparently he had the biggest. I don't know.
Well, he would take it out and play piano with it at parties.
Now that's the party trick.
Yeah, that really fucking is. Okay, so Fred Blassie, to me, most of my life was just the old guy that was a bad guy manager, right?
Yeah.
And then at some point, I don't know, probably in my late 30s, I saw an episode of what might be one of the greatest sitcoms ever made, The Dick Van Dyke Show.
Oh, yeah.
Where at the end, Fred Blassie comes in and fucking just gorilla presses fucking Dick Van Dyke over his head.
Wow.
And then I start reading about like the filing of the teeth and the Los Angeles territory, and he was the WWA champion down there. Which, let me tell you, if you ever want to get your head stuck in a vice, read about the WWA title split sometime. Jesus Christ, that's a hard one to track. But Fred Blassie was a fucking legend up and down California. They'd take him out to New York. He was a draw. He was a guy you would bring in because you wanted to see him. And he was one of a handful of pro wrestlers back in the day that was a mainstream star, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a pretty good book. Like I said, I haven't read it for a while. I would imagine it's available on Amazon. And with that said, Jeremy, I guess I better give my books a plug since we're talking about books. Folks, if you don't care, the professor here has set up a little quick way to get to the Amazon website where you can purchase one or both of my books. And that is, if you want Pin Me, Pay Me, Have Boost Will Travel, go to tinyurl.com, Blaze Book 1. And then tinyurl.com/blazebook2 will take you to, I kicked out on 2, The Education of a Wrestler. And I want to get them books in there. If you go that route, the program does get a small kickback, and we appreciate that very much. And a couple of my other little easy, ebooks are on there, 25 page little ebooks for like $2.99 or something. Just take a look at it once you visit the site. Again, follow me on Twitter at Bobby Blaze 744, the Professor Jeremy at the Geek is Cast, and also the joint account on Twitter and on Facebook, and that is Bell to Bell Blaze. So that's just kind of quick wrap up of that, Jeremy.
And Bobby, we kind of have something we're working on. Do you think summertime is when we're going to try to get that out?
Oh, you know what? I've got some notes on that too. Yeah, I would like to think so. Yeah, I don't know. We haven't sat down and thought about a timeline, to be honest with you. I've got some notes in addition to something you sent me, but again, I've kind of lost track of that project.
Well, I was going to say, as soon as we put that project together, fucking Snowmageddon hits, you know?
Yeah. I think it's a great idea what we have. So I wanted to, I had 3 or 4 other episodes I wanted to include. And that is, kind of the one where Jeremy goes on a WWE rant, and also the one where Bobby goes off on serial killers. And then, so I had some other little things I was going to say. I don't know if I sent you back yet, but I've written down at some point. But I did get a kind of an outline, if you will, of what you sent. And so I wanted to we're going to try and tweak that. But yeah, the professor and I are working on something. We're not sure exactly how we're going to do it, but we're going to do it one way or another. And I think a lot of our fans will enjoy it. So, and it's book related. Is that any more clear than that, Jeremy?
I think that's about as clear as we can make it without writing it down. Yeah.
Yeah. We're past the thought process. We have somewhat of an outline and we have some direction, and Jeremy just kind of put out there maybe a timeline that we may have it done by summer. We'll see.
Yeah. So, I figure that just makes us accountable to ourselves at the very least. You know?
It does. It does very much so. And that's good. So anyway, I think today, it's only supposed to get down to 25 this evening, and then tomorrow is going to be 45. So I imagine there'll be a lot more power going out with some of this ice and stuff, starting to melt where I'm at. But, on Wednesday of this week, it's supposed to be 61 degrees.
Oh man.
So Kentucky just kind of looks out at everyone and says, you think I won't fuck with the weather? Hold my beer.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah, here, hold this.
Just hold this. Kind of like Milton Berle's dick, you know, just hold this. Or LBJ popping out there. Just hold this.
Oh, yeah.
I'll show you, motherfucker.
Well,
and it'll be snowing one day and sunny the next and beach weather the next, and then it's back to fucking freezing rain, man. But it's we're heading toward the end of February now, and our temperature is supposed to be average for this month is 31 typically. But this month I think it's been a little bit lower, on an annual, basis. I think we're going to drop down. It's been a very, pretty bitter, February, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So, but I'm good, man. And I hope a lot of people out there get listening to this podcast. I hope we made you smile or laugh or, gave you something to do for a little bit of your time, and maybe you'll look up some of these great books. We had some books we didn't like, and we didn't browbeat them, because that's not our deal. But Jeremy and I talked privately, and, we've got a couple we could have added, but we didn't. So, and if you got some book choices that weren't mentioned, and if we didn't mention everyone we had written down originally anyway, but if you have some, send them to us, man. We got a couple ideas Jeremy sent me from, the page, I think, from some of our listeners for some upcoming episodes. So there we go. And my battery is about dead.
All right. Well, with that being said, for the late Tex Johnson, Professor Jeremy Vilmur, the freezing cold Bobby Blaze, bye-bye, everybody.